Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Go further with the American Express Business Gold Card. Earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels when you book through AmexTravel.com. Whether your destination is a business conference or a client meeting, your purchases will help you earn more points for future trips. Experience more on your travels with Amex Business Gold. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Well, we could do. Oh, well, hello there. It's 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and I am your host, Rich Ferraro, and this is your Friday 5, which is the weekly roundup of the big stories coming out of the City Ground this week. In just a few minutes, we'll be going over to Jamie at the 1865 news desk, and we'll be saying hello to the Maradona in the Midlands. But before we do, it's just worth reflecting on what a good week it's been, with victories for the first team, the B team, the women's team, and so much more to look forward to as results go our way in all kinds of ways. So, as I said, we'll be saying hello to Maradona in the Midlands in just a minute, but first of all, it's time to get your latest bulletin. Here's Jamie.
Hi, this is Jamie Martin with this week's Top 5 Forest stories from the 1865 news desk. Now, the headline to this week's news: the club have confirmed potential stadium development as soon as next season. New reports from the Athletic have revealed that Forest have confirmed potential stadium development as early as next season. The plans relate to the development of the Peter Taylor main stand, with a new 10,000 capacity structure to replace it with, to quote, Champions League quality facilities. The club have described the development beginning next season as material possibility, and if that is the case, those seated in the stand would be consulted if and when appropriate. The second piece of news this week: Stuart Pearce is in good spirit after a health scare. Forest legend Stuart Pearce is finally back in good health after a scare while on board a flight home to the UK from the States. It has been confirmed. Appearing on TalkSport this week, Mr. Pearce, also known by fans as Psycho, described how on a Virgin Atlantic flight he started to feel pains in his chest. Eventually, airline staff rushed to hook him up to a monitor, corresponding with doctors on the ground to monitor his condition. Pearce then spent time in a Canadian hospital where his plane was diverted to. He praised Virgin staff for their excellent actions during the scare. During his radio appearance, Pearce remained humorous and upbeat despite the scare, and is making a full, speedy and successful recovery. The third piece of news this week: Forest have announced season ticket prices for the 25-26 Premier League season. With much anticipation around potential European/top-end football next season, Nottingham Forest have announced season card prices. Currently, prices are split into 4 zones, plus hospitality, which is prices on request. Zones 1, 2, 3 and 4, with the lowest price being a Zone 4 child at £190, and the highest a Zone 1 adult at £915. Now, the zones are decided by the club and are spread around the stadium depending on where you sit. While increases do vary across the board, many fans have credited the club for their approach with minimal increases ahead of the new season, despite higher performances, which is definitely an encouraging sign. Now, the fourth piece of news this week: Forest B team is into the semi-finals of the International Cup. It's more good news related to Forest youngsters, as this week they beat a Danish youth side to make it into the semi-finals of the Cup. After 2 goals from Eric de Silva Moreira, Forest B team were victorious over the talented North Island, who did manage to pull one back, but ultimately the result ended in the Reds' favour with the 2-1 home win. Now the club moved to the semi-finals of the Premier League International Cup. Brilliant work from them, and wishing them all the best in the semi-finals. Now, the final piece of news, though, this week, multiple players have made it into the League Team of the Week after a stunning City display. A number of Reds have been named in the Premier League Team of the Week by Alan Shearer. Matt Sells, Olarena, Murillo and Callum Hudson-Odoi were all named in Shearer's 11 from the week after Forest's superb performance against Man City and win last Saturday. Nuno Espirito Santo was also named Manager of the Week, making it in total 5 Forest personnel named. A brilliant achievement and a brilliant way to top off an excellent week for Nottingham Forest Football Club. Now, that is all from me, though, this week. That was your 1865 News Roundup. It's been great bringing that to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week as well. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. But from me, that's all. Catch up with me on Twitter via @I'mJamieMartin or via YouTube, Jamie Martin. Speak to you next week. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And I want to say a very, very big hello to my good friend and podcasting colleague, the Maradona the Midlands. Hi.
Hello.
Hello to you too. And let's get straight in there and talk about the first story that Jamie brought us, which is the prospective stadium development. Now, of course, this is all very much hypothetical. We've not seen things from the club to confirm anything. But it looks as though the club are hopeful of getting things underway with the Peter Taylor stand at long, long last.
Yes, well, I believe they told the FAB panel more or less this information very recently. So it does seem to be progressing at an official level. From the looks of it, it's going to be during the course of the season that they want to begin building work, which obviously throws up some questions about how they're going to do it with season, that whole stand more or less being season ticket holders, and where they're going to move them to, and how the match day experience is going to be with building work going on. But other clubs have done it, I suppose. In the past, we used to happen quite regularly when after the Taylor report, and in the early '90s, mid '90s, we all got used to sort of stadiums being constructed one stand at a time. It wasn't such a big deal back then. Maybe health and safety concerns weren't as important as they are now. So yeah, it looks like it's full steam ahead on that one. But thankfully. And thankfully, and it's a long time coming, and let's hope they could do a good job of it.
Yeah, and of course, with Foster and Partners apparently on board. Now, I guess the sceptics will say you look at Foster and Partners' plans for the new Man United ground, and, the wags would say, isn't it a bit appropriate that the way Man United are at the moment, that they're having a ground which could potentially look like a great big circus big top? The other comment I heard, which I particularly liked, is it might be the only way that United get 3 points the rate they're going. So let's hope that the ground is more in keeping with the drawings that we've seen so far. I guess that with moving fans, if it is a mid-season development, yes, that is going to be a problem. We're sold out every week and there's really no extra capacity. I think that in the 90s, it was a bit easier because you were knocking down terraces, so you didn't have to move people who had allocated space. So maybe that's something that's worth thinking about. But it does neatly segue into the other story that Jamie brought us, his third story this week, which was to do with the season ticket prices for next season. And firstly, I think fans are pretty happy that the club have now got into the habit of announcing the prices nice and early, whereas before it used to come several weeks after the end of the season. And we've got this Zone 1 to 4 pricing with hospitality options as well. What are your thoughts on the price increases, Maradona?
My initial reaction was that the Zone 1 price seems incredibly high now. I think eye-watering was my initial description of it. You're paying more or less £50 a match for those tickets now.
For Premier League football, though, it's not like we're in the Championship anymore.
Yeah, but
we're an established Premier League club who may well be in Europe next season.
It still sounds a lot of money to me to watch 90 minutes of football. I don't even say if you get 100 minutes of football. It's like effectively you're putting in 50p a minute, aren't you? If you're sitting there as a meter, and so there's 50p there, 50p there, 50p there, 50p for while the goalkeepers were standing around wasting time.
It's still cheaper than ringing Team Talk back in the day.
Yeah. And people will say, well, it's comparable to going to the theatre now or a top concert. But those are treats. You only do those maybe once or twice a year. And then you're pretty much guaranteed a performance. With football, you're not necessarily guaranteed a good performance. It could be a drab, boring 0-0. I personally wouldn't pay that much money to watch a match, sort of pay £900 for a season ticket. The Zone 3 rather, seems like the right sort of level. About £500 seems about correct. And I don't really understand why the Zone 1 tickets are so much more expensive, say £20 a match more expensive than the Zone 3 ones. You're not getting that better a view. And it's just a matter of personal taste where you like to sit. Some people like sitting up high, getting sort of a bird's eye view of the match. Other people, like me, I used to enjoy sitting by as close to the pitch as possible, where you get a better idea of how much effort the players are putting in the actual speed of the performance. Up high, I always think you get a slightly artificial picture of it, where it looks like the players have more time and space than they actually do. So I think it's slightly unfair on those people who maybe sat in those Zone 1 tickets for years and years and years to suddenly be described as having premium seats with a much better view than the other Forest fans. So I think there maybe should be a bit more of a parity between the different stands. But that's just my personal opinion. If people, if they think that it's worth it, they'll pay the money. But final thought, it's really turned into a rich man's game, hasn't it? You're not going to go there unless you've got a fairly decent income coming in. And so that's a little bit sad. If I remember back to when we were kids, it was very much a working man's game, and sort of the crowd. I had a friend who went to the recent FA Cup game after many, many years, and he commented that the crowd was very different from what he remembered back in the 90s. It was a very different set of people going now. So maybe that's just a sign of the times.
I mean, yeah, this brings into all kinds of economic arguments, supply versus demand, and of course, inflation of ticket prices versus wage inflation over that same time period. You could do a whole thesis on it, and this is not what this show is about. What I would say is, having conquered in the FA Cup match, the last part of the ground I hadn't sat in before, which is the corner between the Bridgeford stand and the main stand, which is one of the lower zones. I can't even remember it. I think it's Zone 3, maybe even Zone 4. But you know what? If you get a chance to get a ticket there at that price, that's a steal. It was loads of fun and a really good view of the pitch. And I really enjoyed sitting there. I've covered every other part of the ground over the years. I have to say is that where 1865 Dad sits, which is Zone 2, I suspect that, okay, he gets the senior citizens price. I suspect he'll probably be quite happy to keep paying that price in the next year or so. Okay, let's move on. And one of the other big stories that came out just about a week ago was Stuart Pearce, former captain, former manager at the City Ground, got taken ill on a flight from Vegas where he was watching Wigan Warriors play rugby. Don't ask me. But yeah, the flight had to be diverted and he ended up in a hospital in Canada, And it was a heart scare. Apparently his heart rate had gone up and it was confirmed it was down to a virus, so it wasn't a heart attack. He's had treatment. He said he's feeling better. Now, Maradona, I know you spend a lot of time listening to TalkSport. Did you hear the great man on doing his little interview there?
I didn't hear him live because I don't listen to that particular show. But I have heard clips since, and it's funny that Jamie said he was being humorous. I think Stuart Pearce would use one of his own words, which would be humourable. I think Stuart Pearce would be humourable. That's it. But it wasn't very nice. I woke up Saturday morning and listening to Talk Sport, and the first thing I heard was that Stuart had that heart scare, and it's a bit of a shock to the system, because to people of our age, he was almost a superhero type figure, sort of a Superman, if you will, with almost mythological powers. It seemed he could never be hurt, and so for him to have sort of quite a human frailties that happen to all of us as we get older. It was a bit of a sobering and sad moment, but it's brilliant to hear that he's feeling better and it's nothing too serious. And hopefully he'll be back. I think he's quite heavily involved in rugby league. Actually, I think he's on the board of Wigan. That's why he was there. It's his other great love. Apart from football.
Yeah, I understand that. Lord knows why, because he's from West London.
He just likes it. People, even people from London can like rugby league.
But why is he on the board at Wigan? That's what I don't get. He's got no connections. Anyway, and also, why were two Northwest rugby clubs playing in Vegas? I don't know. The world's gone mad, I tell you.
They were having a whole festival there last weekend, Vegas. I had teams from Australia. They'd taken over the American football stadium there, and they've flown over plane loads of fans from England and Australia. There's a whole sort of festival to try and break the game in America, apparently. So apparently it went very well.
Even though they've got their own version of egg chasing over there. So.
But they wear pads. There's no pads, you see. It's trying to attract that audience who doesn't like safety.
Oh, right. Well, that'll go down well in the deregulated world of the US these days. And having talked economics, we're in danger of getting into politics. So it seems to me like it'd be a good time to take a little break, and we'll be back after this.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du noch?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, our Friday 5 news roundup with me, the Maradona of the Midlands. No, with him, Maradona of the Midlands, and me, Rich Ferraro.
I am the Maradona of the Midlands.
You are indeed the Maradona of the Midlands. Before we go on, just a little word for something that we didn't have in the news roundup, which is the women's team. Now, we'd been hoping to bring you a women's show this week, but we couldn't for various boring technical and administrative reasons. So we hope to bring Adam to you next week. And Maradona, it's really good to know that the women's team are continuing their progress. That was very much a 6-pointer against Burnley, and they've won it, and they're still top of the table. So things are going well for the women, aren't they?
Certainly are. I'm looking forward to the promotion party coming soon. And this keeps them with the netball sort of launching as well this week. It seems like women's sport is really, I could never have imagined it would take this sort of centre stage and demand this sort of attention. So it's good for the girls.
Good for the girls indeed. And also good for the Forest B team. So what used to be called the under-21s or the academy. And they're through to the semi-finals of the Premier League International Cup. Now, I'm going to just look up the team that they played again because it's a complicated name. So it was against Nordjylland. And the match was played at the exotic place of Loughborough, but Eric da Silva Moreira got 2 goals for the under-21s, and that saw a 2-1 win against our opponents, and it was commented on by Lewis Grabban, who's of course a coach for the B team now, and he was pointing out that it was a different kind of challenge to what you get in the Premier League too, and also it makes it better for the players' development. So, although it's great to win matches and to make progress in cups and leagues and so on, and let's be honest, we're doing better in this cup than we are in the league. But the key thing is creating players who are going to be ready to make progress, whether that be progress at the City Ground or go on for good careers elsewhere. And of course, we've heard Nikola Milenkovic talking about Zach Abbott's progress, and Zach Abbott himself saying that he wants to take the best of Murillo and Milenkovic. And he also commented on this game about how it's a chance to play against really technical players, different kinds of challenges. And he said, we're moving towards men's football now, and the club wants winners, so we want to win something. Really, really promising to see that even though the league campaign is middling, the cup and these kinds of matches are presenting new challenges for our youngsters.
Yes, and I think is it obviously a very decent side. I think that Danish team is part of the Brentford group of clubs. So they've been a good source of players for Brentford down the years. And so obviously provide a good challenge for the youth team. And I mean, the league form is going to be up and down. It is very much dependent on luck and what sort of batch of players you bring through. The only sort of in recent years, I can't remember as being brilliant at youth team levels. The last time I can remember as being great was in the Paul Hart days when we had that whole glut of players with Andy Reid, JJs, Prutz, Stores, Gareth Williams, all those guys coming all at once. So sometimes it is just down to a bit of luck and having the right players coming through all at the same time. But yeah, it's all good for the future. But plus, we've got hopefully European football coming next season, so we'll need to bolster the squad somehow. And you can't just buy loads of players in, so we'll maybe need some of those youth team players to come in for League Cup matches, FA Cup matches, and maybe even Premier League matches.
And maybe, maybe even Champions League matches where I think you can name more players on the bench. So it's one of those, isn't it? Even if they're not necessarily going to play, what a great experience it'll be in the players' development to get the chance to do that. Let's just move on then, and we'll go to the final story, which is about Alan Shearer's Premier League Team of the Week, which was basically... You know what, it reminded me of those days, we talked about Stuart Pearce earlier, those days over 30 years ago now when we had like 4 or 5 players in the England squad. I think it was like 3 of the back 4 and 2 midfielders or something like that were made up of Forest players. And this Team of the Week had a similar kind of feel, albeit obviously multinational. So Sells, Aina, Murillo, Hudson-Odoi and Nuno as the gaffer. Just a reflection of a superb performance and victory against Manchester City, yeah?
It was, yes. And it probably could have had another couple of players in there. Milenkovic, Nico Williams, Dominguez. They all could have been in that team. They all played their hearts out against City and just worked so hard. You can see the concentration on the faces throughout the game, no slip-ups. And it's brilliant to see. It's good recognition for not only for the season so far, but for that match as well.
Yeah, and I mean, reflecting on the City game as well, I was a little bit surprised to see that Ryan Yates didn't get his chance to start and Dominguez was still in there. But of course, you know, Yates, he couldn't have done the job that Dominguez did on the day because we went basically to 4-4-2 with Dominguez playing right midfield to back up Ola Aina at right back, and of course Hudson-Odoi has been kind of switching from wing to wing, and I think that's been to help the fullback as well. It's strange actually. I was remembering that Hudson-Odoi did play, I think under Tuchel, he played some of his football as a wing back at Chelsea. So Nuno obviously trying to find different ways to get the results after a slightly sticky patch.
Yeah, I mean, and that shows a level of improvement in Hudson-Odoi from just during the course of this season, because at the beginning of the season, I think a few of us commented on the podcast that whichever side he was playing on, the fullback had a harder job because he wasn't helping out much with the defensive duties. But he's come on leaps and bounds in that aspect. He's much better at helping out and working so hard and lasting than full 90 minutes as well. which probably last season and this season you wouldn't have seen him to keep on running and scoring a late goal like that. So yeah, testament to his improved fitness and strength, and sort of maybe trust in his own body that he can last a full Premier League season, and trust his body not to give up on him.
And the work ethic from every single player, and as well as the tactical now from Nuno in terms of how he changed things up a couple of times during the match. That's how you know things are going well, because of course when things aren't going well, the criticism is sometimes that Nuno's a little bit slow to react, but he got it spot on all the way through the match, didn't he?
He did, yeah. In every aspect, it was a perfect day, wasn't it? The weather was nice, the result was good, the players played well, the tifo at the beginning of the match, everything just, it could not have been a better day in any aspect. It was just brilliant. It was just the sort of thing you look back on in 20 years' time and still remember, hopefully.
Yeah, and in case we haven't said it before, a big thank you to Forza Garibaldi for their hard work in putting the tifos together. It's really, really good to see. Just a quickie on Ola Aina. He had a bit of a sticky patch. He was looking very leggy, wasn't he? But he was really back to his best last weekend. And there's a statistic here that he apparently, according to Who Scored, leads the way in the top 5 European leagues for winning the ball back in defensive areas. And when he's on form, it seems like it's impossible to get past him, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily with his hair, you don't necessarily realise what big guy he is. One time I realised when he for a couple of matches, maybe I can't remember which one it was, when he had it braided down, and then he looked, oh gosh, I was actually a really big old unit of a guy as well. So he's hard to get past with his hair sort of on field as it is now. He's got that sort of soft edge to him, like a fun children's character. And you don't necessarily realise that he's probably a really hard guy as well. When he's kicking you, it must hurt. So he works so hard. So it's probably the reason why he's looked a bit leggy in certain matches. But hopefully he's recovered that. He's got his second win. And
I don't know why. I was just thinking, for some bizarre reason recently, it's like you could have a big hair back four of Ola Aina at right back, Cucurella at left back, and then Wout Faes and David Luiz at centre half, and there'd be a lot of hair to get past there, wouldn't there? Yeah,
I mean, but those other three players you mentioned have ridiculous hair, especially Cucurella. He just annoys me. And from what I've heard from Chelsea fans, he annoys them as well. 90% of the time, he's just trying to fix his hair rather than actually concentrating on defending. Why does he tie it up if he wants hair like that? Why couldn't he have a high pony, for goodness sake?
Well,
I mean, we all want to see.
It worked for Felipe, didn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just move on. A couple of things to finish off with. Number one, the match against Ipswich this weekend. I mean, Forest have got to be looking to win it, surely.
We've got to be looking to win it. I've heard a lot of fans being a little bit nervous about this match. I think the physicality of Ipswich is worrying a few people. But, and I say this more or less every time I'm on, nothing new from me. If we work harder than them and match them sort of for work rate and sprints and all that sort of thing, closing down and concentrate, we will win because we have better players. That's all we've got to do. We've just got to not make any silly mistakes, work harder, and trust that our quality sees us through. The cream will rise to the top with a bit of luck.
The other thing that's worth talking about is that Nuno, in anticipation of the match, he confirmed that apart from Carlos Miguel, there's a fully fit squad, which is a nice position to be in. That's a quote. And also, he mentioned about Callum Hudson-Odoi's form, and we've already talked about that, his adaptability, his performance levels. There's always room for improvement, but yeah. And then he also, to segue into our last little bit of conversation, Morgan Gibbs-White, regarding the England squad, let's wait and see what Thomas Tuchel does. So, question being, Morgan Gibbs-White, surely at the moment, probably the best English number 10?
Yeah, and he offers something completely different to anybody else. There's nobody else who plays in that similar sort of position who will give that sort of work rate that Morgan does. And
I mean, the question is maybe the other Morgan Rogers. He's the other guy in form at the moment.
Yeah, but for me, when I see him play, he doesn't do much apart from score goals. I wouldn't even really consider him to be a midfielder. I would just sort of say he's a second striker, really. The way I see him play, he's very good at finishing, but I don't think
breaking the lines, whereas Morgan Gibbs-White does more in deeper positions. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, if anything, I mean, I was maybe last season I would have been critical of Morgan for doing too much running around and too much of that dirty stuff. But I think he's maybe just reined it back a little bit this season, and you've seen a more effective Morgan.
Yeah, it's also to do with the way the rest of the team are playing around him, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
And that brings me on to two wild cards. So Callum Hudson-Odoi and Elliot Anderson. Have they got a chance of getting into the England squad?
I think Elliot Anderson, so many people have been talking about him. I think he might well have a chance. I think a lot of people have been impressed with the way he's played. And again, he's a bit different from a lot of other midfielders. Where he's got the quality on the ball. He's got that hard edge to him as well. I think so many people have been impressed. There's been so many whispers. I think it's a real possibility. Callum Hudson-Odoi, I don't know. It's a big ask. There are, I can't think of any of them now, but I'm sure there are other wide players available. And so, but it's Beckham. Beckham's still playing, isn't he? Beckham and Andy Sinton. Andy Sinton's a hell of a player to get past.
Well, isn't he just? Yeah. In the wide positions, yeah. Grealish isn't going to be in there. Gordon is Gordon? He's going to be in the squad, I think. Yeah. I don't think Marcus Rashford's quite ready for a recall to the England squad just yet, do you?
No, I don't think so. But he's been impressive, though. You never know.
Yeah.
He might get one because he's obviously still got the quality, and he's just being away from Old Trafford. It's like a cesspit of negativity, isn't it? It just kills players. So I don't know. To be honest, I'll be honest with you. I've not spoken to Thomas, and I don't know what his thoughts are at the moment. He's playing his cards very close to his chest. He's spending a lot of time in Germany. He's not picking up the phone when I call. He's not been on the WhatsApp groups. So it would just be pure speculation if I said anything to the contrary.
And I'm very aware of the fact that, listener, by the time you're listening to this particular podcast, the squad may well already have been announced, and we may be looking either brilliant or very silly. And either way, we say thank you very much for joining us for this episode of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. Thank you to Maradona. Thank you also to Jamie for bringing us the news. And, of course, do join us after the Ipswich match, when we'll be bringing you a match report from our man at Portman Road. Until next time, come on you Reds.
It's not the 90s, even though we all wish it still was. It's not the 90s anymore. God.
Gen Z listeners, if you'd like to disagree with Maradona's assertion there, then feel free to get in touch via social media. Use TikTok, we're on there.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.